Hello, everybody. We're pleased to have Ran Hindi with us to talk about his entrepreneurial life and his challenges. Rand is a serial entrepreneur who created a social network at the age of 14, and 20 years later, Rand built from scratch four other companies. So, hello, Rand. Is being an entrepreneur a gift you get when you're born, or is it something you can work on?
To me, being an entrepreneur is not really something I thought about as a career. It's just that I had a bunch of ideas and projects I wanted to do, and these did not exist. And so I figured I would just try and build them myself. It's only later in my professional life that I realized that being an entrepreneur could be a job.
All right, nice. So, what motivates and drives a serial entrepreneur on a daily basis? Is it the money? Is it the impact on society? Or is it boredom?
Someone asked me recently why I started a new company a week after selling my previous company. Because technically I didn't have to. And I told them that to me, what matters isn't how much money you make, but whether you achieved the vision you have in your entrepreneurial life. And the vision I have for the future of technology, for how this is going to impact us in the world, could be materialized in 20 different companies. It doesn't matter. So it's not about building and selling a company. It's about achieving a long-term vision in your life.
Okay, nice. So entrepreneurs often have many different business ideas. So how do you choose the right idea you are going to dedicate the foreseeable future of your life?
It's a really tricky question. Finding the right idea, I wouldn't say that the idea matters that much. I think what you start with is very often different than what ends up working in your company. The only thing you need to be sure about is that you have a very clear vision of what you're trying to achieve. The actual intermediate step in achieving that vision are going to be learned as you go, as you experiment, as people start using your product. There's no way that you can predict the future, but you can orient it in a way that you believe is right.
Okay, nice. So in the big lines, what would you say are the key elements for starting a successful business?
I would say there are two things. First, you need to find someone to do it with. It's very difficult if you're a solo founder, the only founder, to have someone challenge you on those ideas. When you have a co-founder, then you have two people thinking, which sometimes might disagree, but at least the options are on the table. So the number one thing is I would find a co-founder. The number two thing is I would make sure that I'm willing to go all in. You need grit, you need perseverance if you want to be successful, and you need a vision. These are the elements that are necessary to start a company.
Okay, nice, thank you. So Snips is the company you sold to Sonos. So how did you first finance Snips, and what are the criteria investors will look for before investing?
I'm going to be honest, when I started Snips, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. My co-founders and myself, all three of us had PhDs in artificial intelligence, and we felt that AI was becoming this major driving force in technology, and we just wanted to do something about it. So we started experimenting. We actually launched 17 products using artificial intelligence before we found what our business really was. And then we went on to raise some funding from investors, and eventually we got acquired by Sonos, that was one of our customers.
Okay, yeah, well, this was my next question. It's that you told in an interview that Snips went through 10 different apps before focusing on the B2B business. So, how do an investor adapt to the market demand and keep his head straight when its initial idea is not working?
The vision that we had at Snips was always the same. We wanted to use artificial intelligence to simplify the way that people interacted with technology, and we wanted to do that while guaranteeing privacy. This has never changed. Across all 10 different things we tried, we had this common vision. What did change is what we built and how we built it. And to some extent, it doesn't matter what you do as long as it gets you closer to your long-term vision. What we had sold investors was a vision. It wasn't a product. In retrospect, if I had to start over again, which I did, by the way, I wouldn't wait until I've already experimented with a few things before officially starting a company and raising money.
Okay, and so once the business is established, what are the main important acts of focus? Is it margin, employee happiness, the board members' approval?
The first thing that you need if you want to build a successful company is an amazing team. if you're not able to attract top talent, you are going to basically end up with something average. So I would say that finding the right people to hire and making them want to join the company is going to be critical. Then as a second step, you need to figure out what people actually want out of your product. You need to understand the user needs and you need to understand how you can address them. And then you can find investors. Raising money is the easiest part of building a startup. There's a ton of money around right now that is waiting to be invested. There are very few good entrepreneurs. There are very few good ideas that works.
Okay, so talking about the acquisition, so before the acquisition, you said that you were already planning to hand over the CEO role of your company. So how do you prepare for such a transition? And did the merging help with the process?
Indeed, as we were going through the acquisition process, we were also raising a new round of funding. And I had been running the company for over 6 years at that point. And it's not that I didn't feel passionate about what we did at Snips. It's just that I felt that a company had grown to a point where someone else could take over and do a better job than I could. I think the difficult thing about being a CEO is knowing when you should delegate to someone else. And so it took a year of transitioning. I initially was looking for someone external, but then found someone inside the company that was a much better fit for that role. And in general, I would always say that if things are going well, you should promote someone internally over bringing someone external. So I think this was a very smooth process, quite frankly. And it enabled me to start thinking about my next venture, which I started since then.
Okay, nice. So as the CEO role, how do you manage efficiently your team?
There are multiple different ways of being a CEO. I would say that the French way is very typical CEO administrator, as in you need to be the one controlling the finances, the legal, the HR, which is really not what I believe is the right way of thinking about the role of a CEO, which is, I think, better when you think about the American type of CEO. The role of a CEO is to understand everything that happens in a company, to own the vision, and to find the best people to execute day to day on the operations. The role of the CEO is not to manage 1,000 people, it's to find the people who can manage 1,000 people. There is a quote I really like from two designers, Ray and Charles Eames. They say that you should never delegate understanding. The way I understand this as a CEO is I should be the first to do something, to understand what this thing entails, so that I could find someone better than me at doing that.
Okay, nice. So that was my next question, because you seem to follow the American leadership style with repetitive prompts and maybe divisive comments. So is that the recommended style of leadership? There
is no recommended style of leadership. It depends on the company you're building. My previous company, Snips, a lot of our strategy was to be provocative, right? To be the underdog French company that has a bit of an edgy spin. My new company, Zama, which is all about privacy, we're doing the exact opposite. We've done zero PR. We basically don't tell what we do. People hear about it from word of mouth. It really, really depends on what we're trying to achieve, and it depends on who you're trying to target with your messaging. As a CEO, however, in both cases, there is something in common that will never change, is that we are vision-driven people. My role is to make the vision clear to everybody in the company and to make them understand why what we do is important and why they should be spending the next few years working together on achieving that.
Okay, thank you. So for the future employees that will watch this interview, what a successful employee looks like?
Employer?
Employee.
A successful employee, I believe, is someone that believes in the vision of the company. That's the number one thing. If you don't believe in what the company is trying to achieve, you're never going to put in the effort to make it happen. The second thing is you want people who are fast learner. Not only people with existing skills, but also people who can pick up new skills. In particular, if your company is in an industry that is new, because by definition, nobody has experience in it. 10 years ago, if you tried to find someone with 10 years AI experience, there would maybe be like 5 of them. So it's really important to give people the opportunity to learn the skills that are needed to be successful in their job. And finally, I think it's important for people to realize that being in a startup means that you're going to be a lot more autonomous than in a bigger company. So you need to feel comfortable with this sort of huge void in which you're operating initially, instead of waiting for someone to tell you what to do.
Okay, thank you. So how do you, as the CEO, how do you manage your time? Because you must have loads of work and...
My schedule really depends on what is important for the company. When I'm fundraising, for example, I'm 8 a.m., 8 p.m. on the phone, always pitching, always talking to investors. This is a very, very, very exhausting process. At other times, it's going to be less than that. Usually, I prefer to keep my mornings to myself, to work on things by myself, and do my meetings in the afternoon. This gives me a bit of a chance to not end up in meeting overflow, where you spend your entire day responding to people instead of actually building something. And I think many CEOs spend too much time in meetings and not enough time building stuff.
Okay, thank you. So you've mentioned in 2019 that you're interested in different industries such as blockchain, quantum computers, medical hardware, and so on. So have you managed to invest in these industries of interest? And could you maybe tell us more on the impact of an industry you are really excited about in the future?
When I sold my company, I started basically angel investing, specifically focusing on very deep tech companies at the very early stage. My sweet spot is finding a founder who just had a recent scientific breakthrough and wants to be in the first wave of companies in that space. The more math, the more happy I get, usually. So I picked 6 industries. Privacy technologies, so my own company, Zama, is a cryptography company. Blockchain, I've been investing for quite some time in DeFi, decentralized finance, NFTs and things like that, which this year were actually pretty successful. That was a good call, I guess. And then I'm interested in high-performance computing, so new ways of manipulating and computing data. So quantum computing, FPGAs, things like that. On the bio side, I'm interested in, generally speaking, bioinformatics and how do you use artificial intelligence to manipulate and understand biology, which, by the way, is what my PhD was in 10 years ago. The second thing I'm interested in is medical hardware. I think there is a trend right now of taking big, expensive machines and make them cheaper and smaller so that for the same budget, governments could have 10 times more capabilities to manage pandemics and healthcare. And finally, the last one I'm interested in is psychedelics. So psychedelics, people don't realize, is one of the most effective ways of treating mental health. It's becoming legal in most of the US. There are many companies now worth billions of dollars effectively inventing new molecules that are not LSD. I know it sounds a bit crazy because people have been telling us for multiple decades that if you took psychedelics, you'd go crazy. And now they're telling us that it's more effective than any treatment that exists. So this is really what I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find very new markets where everything has to be proven, and I try to be the first investor in.
Okay. Could you maybe explain the seahorse theory?
How did you pick up on that? Right. So you mean what I talked about in the interview?
Yes, right. Yeah.
So there's no seahorse theory.
Okay.
Actually, the funny story about that is my girlfriend basically challenged me to say the word seahorse, hippocampe in French, during an interview. And at the end of the interview, I was like, I haven't said seahorse. How am I going to say that? And so I just literally said, it's the seahorse theory. And if you look at this interview, it's really funny because you can see that there's like a blank, and and the journalist is like, so you mean? And when you look at my reaction, I was not expecting him to challenge me on that. And I literally just said, yeah.
That's why I wanted to pick up on it today. All right, yeah. So, as an investor, so as a business angel, do you invest and spend your time in more than one company?
I only have one company I focus on day to day,
Okay.
Zama, my own company. This is my number one priority. It's really what I work on every day. As an angel investor, I try to make my job as easy as possible. And the way to do that is to only invest in industries that I understand personally. So blockchain, high performance computing, psychedelics, these are things you don't need to convince me of. I already know that these are important things. I know what are the opportunities in them. All I'm looking for are the right people and the right project. So typically my decision time for investing is very short, a few days. I don't need to go and ask you 100,000 questions. All I need is for you as a founder to convince me that you're the right person to build that company.
Okay, nice, thank you. So maybe one last question about privacy. So now we know that Apple is using privacy as an added value. How do you see the future of privacy where we are in a world where we are getting much and more observed by technology?
Privacy is not a new topic. It's been existing forever. I think what has changed is the scale at which privacy is being abused these days. Mass surveillance, data breaches. Every day someone gets hacked and your data gets exposed. Just recently, this psychological clinic in, I believe, Norway or Finland got hacked, and the hackers released on the internet the records of the sessions with the psychologist every day until the ransom was paid. This is insane. This is nightmare scenario. But now we're getting to a point where technology is advancing fast enough that we can invent ways of keeping the data encrypted, whatever you're doing with it. The whole internet could be encrypted end to end, just like when we're sending each other a message. And nobody should ever be able to access this data. So I think within 10 years, probably there's going to be some kind of new internet protocol. You know this HTTPS thing you connect to with a small lock in your browser? There's going to be something beyond that, which guarantees that nobody can ever see your data. And privacy to me is no longer going to be an issue. I think in a decade, people will not care about privacy, not because it doesn't matter, but because it'll be guaranteed by design in every digital stuff that they're using.
Okay, thank you. And should we be scared of the evolution of quantum computers, which will allow hackers to expand their...
Well, so fortunately, we already have what we call post-quantum cryptography. So we already have encryption techniques which are resistant to quantum computers. So it's only going to be an issue for people who do not update their systems. But then again, if someone doesn't update their system, they're probably not secure today as well. So I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay, thank you. So last but not least, if you were to write a book about yourself, how would you name it?
Making technology disappear.
Nice. Thank you, Rand.
Thank you.